Granger, what is up, my friend? So good to see you.
Man, good to see you too.
You are the modern day Renaissance man, I've decided.
That's how I feel about you.
Are you serious? No, 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 no.
Yes,
No,
yes.
man. You're educated, you're a speaker, you're a musician, you're an actor now. I'm like, look at this guy.
Well, as I've gotten older, and coming from the entertainment industry, I have started to zero in on the things that have meaning to them.
Hmm.
Not because I'm setting out to be this man of meaning and to have a legacy of meaning. It's not because of that. It's actually much more shallow. It's because when I do things that are meaningful, it makes me feel good. It makes me feel like it's worth it, and it
Hmm.
makes me feel like I want to do it again tomorrow. And that's important in a world where we can get in this rat race. And in the music business, after so many years of touring and putting out albums and putting out radio singles, and the thing about a radio single is once it peaks, even if it's number one, you get to celebrate that. And then the next day, this new discussion comes in your inbox of what's the next single.
Right.
And it's always the expectation for that single is always the top. It's got to be the top. And at some point you realize, wait, you mean there's no end to this?
Hmm.
Like, is 19 number ones enough? No. Is 27 enough? No. Is 50 enough? No. It's always one more. And so my point is, after so many shows and so many concerts, it's like I need something more to make me want to do this tomorrow, to make me want to do this next year. And so we started setting out as a band, just saying, hey, we're gonna go out there and play for the one tonight. Instead of playing for the crowd, let's play for the one, because someone came that is wanting to forget something that they just don't want to remember anymore. Or someone came to remember something they haven't been able to feel in a long time. Or someone has just came to just feel something again emotionally. And so as musicians, we have that kind of responsibility to give that to them. And if we just look at it as a crowd, then it means nothing. But if we
Yeah.
could look at it as one person, then it starts mattering. And then it feels like I want to do it again.
I like that. I heard, I don't know where I heard this, but somebody had posed a question. They said, when's the last, and they were talking directly to me. I was having a conversation with them, and they said, when's the last time you did something that was just intrinsically valuable or intrinsically had meaning?
Mm,
Not because you were going to get any praise or accolades or notoriety or some sort
mm.
of, pats on the back, but just because it was intrinsically valuable, like reading a book, or having a really good conversation with a friend. That's something that if nobody saw it and it impacted nobody else, you would still do it and find meaning from it. It was a really powerful
Mm.
question the way they phrased that.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. And it could be as simple as, like my grandmother's 96 and she doesn't get around very well. She can't hear very well. It could just be going and sitting with her and
Mm,
not being on my phone.
yeah.
And that's not it's not always something we want to do, but we do it because it matters and it's important.
Mm-hmm.
And if we could
Yeah,
stack up a bunch of those things at the end of our life, then I think it's a life worth living.
I agree. I agree. It's just so hard, I think we've been conditioned in a lot of ways to do things for other people, and I don't mean for the service of other people. I mean to entertain or to perform for other people, not
Yeah.
necessarily acts of service. I think there's a difference there.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, and you feel that in the podcast world for sure. It's like, feed me, Ryan, feed me. What do you have for me today?
Yeah, but you know what? I've changed that. Even just, I mean, we've had a lot of discussions over the past 3 or 4 months, just personal discussions, and I've changed the way I've started to talk to people, and I actually just want to have conversations that I feel a little selfish. I'm like, actually, I need to talk to Granger. And so let's have a conversation, and I'll just hit record so other people can get value from something that I actually needed for myself. So I feel a little selfish in a lot of ways.
I don't think it's selfish at all. I understand why you think it would be, but yeah, you've developed a platform and you've talked to enough people where people legitimately just want to hear what you have to say, because you've been in the room with a lot of people that have thought deeply about really important subjects. And because of that, you've absorbed that, and people just want to hear you talk. And I think that's a really good thing. It's not selfish to hit record and let other people hear it.
Yeah, man. That's good. That's good. I'm really interested in how you strike the balance between, because you are an artist and you want to put your message out there, whether it's on the screen or whether it's behind the microphone, like you want to put your message out there. Like, how do you strike the balance with making sure that what you're sharing does resonate with other people, but also you're not trying to just simply entertain, that there's actually meaning and significance to it? Because there's probably a lot of things that you could do that you turn down, I imagine.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's an everyday thing. That's an everyday battle. It's an everyday discussion. It's an everyday trial and error. I live in the world where if I want to make so much money, for instance, I could just say yes to everything and then not be a dad at all and be completely gone from my wife and on the road all the time. And that was hard for me to learn. In the service industry, I guess in a way, I'm in the service industry where I'm a work for hire, and that was really hard for me. I remember the first time I turned down a weekend, a Friday, Saturday run in the middle of the summer. And for so long, I took every show to pay the bills. And I remember we were working so hard, and my booking agent said, Granger, you don't have to work that weekend of the 15th and 16th of June if you don't want to. And I was like, what do you mean? What do you mean we don't have to? He's like,
Yeah.
you're okay. Like, you could take off a weekend. And it was so hard for me because I was always just about no weekends are wasted. No, Friday's a money day, Saturday's a money day, never waste it. And it was so hard to realize that staying at home and not making money was more valuable. And that was difficult, a difficult mountain to climb.
Yeah, that has been for me. You know what's hard for me is finding when enough is enough.
Yeah.
And usually it's on the back of some sort of external validation, like money. At some point we all have enough money to cover our needs and some of our wants as well. It's like, all right, yeah, I can make more money. Is that going to make my life that much better? No, I might have a newer car, or I might take one more vacation, but at what cost? At what expense?
That is that is like the question, right? You say most of the time it has to do with something like money. Well, it's almost all the
Yeah,
time. It's almost
for sure.
always and there, we all admit there's a certain level of income that you could have where you're comfortably paying the bills, you're living comfortably. And that's subjective to different people, but some people have said like $70,000 a year is what you need to have bills paid, to have food on the table, and have clothes, and you're comfortable. And then everything after that, you start wondering. And the way we could test it for me is I could look back in my life when I didn't have much money, and I can go, was I visibly happier then?
Hmm.
And the answer is always no. It's always no. I wasn't
Right.
more happy then or now. It's always relative. And I tell young artists, young musicians that are struggling and trying to be on a big stage, and I say, let me tell you something. This is a fact. The great days I had back then were no worse or no better than the great days I have now. And the low days back then were no worse or better than the low days I have now. It's always relative to where we are. So a bad show back then was bad, and it still is bad. And a really good show back then, which would be terrible for me now, was still a great feeling back then relative
Yeah.
to who I was.
You said when you connect with young up and coming artists, that's one thing I've really noticed that you do so well. And I really admire this. I need to let you know, is for somebody as busy as you are, and somebody that I imagine is as popular and have all sorts of pull for your attention, you are so incredibly good at connecting with other people. Whether it's me, or I was listening to your podcast a week or two ago, and there was a young man, he was struggling with something. I can't remember maybe it was a woman. I can't remember exactly what it
Mm.
was, but you challenged that individual to do something. Again, I can't remember. And you said, you call me and you let me know that you've done this thing.
Mm.
And I hear you say that all the time. And now you're talking about connecting with these up and coming artists. I mean, I'm impressed with that. Like, how do you make that work where you actually are a man in high demand and yet you always find time for individual people?
Because that's my fuel. That's what keeps me going. Because if I didn't connect to that guy you talked about on the podcast, if I never get feedback and I just say this stuff into a microphone, it just disappears into the cosmos, and I never know if the advice was good or bad, and years go by, it starts to lose its power. It starts to lose its substance. But if that guy emails me 6 months later and goes, "Hey man, I took your advice, and you know what? I'm actually feeling better." Or I took your advice and it actually got a little bit worse. Well, that's feedback in the same way. But at least I know, okay, things are changing. Like the ball is rolling. Things matter. And it makes me want to fire up the mic and do another podcast.
Yeah, it's something that I admire a lot. I'm like, man, that's awesome. He still connects with that person or trying to have that person reach out. I definitely need to do a better job at that. Um,
You do, Ryan. And whenever you get together with your guys and they all come together, that is that personal feedback that you're hearing. And you're hearing guys come up to you and they're meeting you. You're like, man, your podcast changed my life. And you see them wearing your gear and it's like order of a man hat on their head. And that feedback, if you didn't have it, take all that away, take out social media, take out any comments, and you're just speaking into a microphone. I don't know how much longer you do it.
yeah, I've thought about that actually. At times, I think, I would still do it. I would do it because, again, it's intrinsically valuable if I got no feedback whatsoever. But in reality, like if I knew that it wasn't impacting people, the tank would be on empty pretty
Yes.
quickly, I imagine.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, true. One thing I've noticed too that you've done, and I don't know how long this has been going, but man, I've been listening to your sermons as well, and they are killer. Like, how long have you been preaching and sharing that message the way that you
Mm.
have?
Yeah, man. Well, first of all, thank you. It's something I'm passionate about, and I actually love doing it. But that happened when after we lost my son, River, we Amber and I, my wife, got invited to a couple different churches to kind of sit in a couch setting with a pastor, and he just kind of asked questions, and we talked about a few things. And I did one with this pastor in Indiana on Zoom, and he said, "Hey, I'll just ask you some questions, super casual, and you just answer some questions." This was during COVID when no one was meeting in person. And I was like, "Yeah, sure." I did it on Zoom. Well, then later on, he just like 8 months later, he messaged me and said, "Hey, do you want to do that Zoom thing again? We'll get on and just I'll play it for the congregation on the screen, ask you some questions." And I had this feeling, and I said, "Man, Ted, first of all, I'd love to do that, but would you be open for me flying there to Indiana, getting up on the stage and actually trying to deliver a sermon?"
Yeah.
And he goes, "You got something you're working on?" And I said, "Yeah, I've been writing up something." And he goes, "Send it to me and then we'll talk." The smart guy, you know.
Yeah, he wanted to vet that
Yeah.
first.
Yeah, he wanted to vet it. So I sent him like a little draft I've been working on, and he goes, "Man, I think I'd like to give it a shot. Let's do it." So I flew to Indiana. I got up there and I was so nervous. I remember going into the parking lot that Sunday morning, and I saw people driving, pulling into the parking lot, and they're stepping out of their cars with their Bibles and their little notepads. And I suddenly got really nervous. I was like, "Whoa, this is heavy. This is different than a concert.
Is
I'm
it?
I'm I'm replacing someone's uh, Sunday morning word from God."
Yeah, it's a
I
little
was
bit
like,
weightier, I would say.
man, I was like, I was like, man, I don't think I'm not worthy of something like this. But I went in, I was super nervous. I had two sermons that morning, and delivered one at like 9 a.m. and one at like 11. But then I walked away, and my first thought was, I can't wait to do this again.
Hmm. That's how you knew. You're like, this
That's
is
how I
if
knew.
I'm
Yeah,
so excited about this. You
that's
said
how I
something.
knew.
I think you said it before we hit record because I was talking about being nervous about a post that I had made, and you said that's how you know.
Yeah, yeah,
Is that
that's
what
the
works for you?
indicator.
Is it the nerves
That's
and
like, yeah, Yeah, that's the indicator for me. It's like super nervous, not in a stressful way, but in a like a you know that positive anxiety where you're like
It's anxious.
I
Yeah.
I'm anxious and I can't wait to do it. Um, and I used to feel that in high school football. I used to feel it, all these different events in my life. You feel it at your wedding day. But that's how this matters. This matters to me.
I think it's powerful just because in modern times it seems like we spend so much time running away from those feelings. If we're uncomfortable, if it's awkward, if there's any
Mm,
sort of potential negative ramification from what you're about to step into, or any sort
mm,
of risk, it's like, nope, nope, nope,
mm.
not for me. And it's so easy because there's no consequence for taking the path of least resistance, which is what most people take, unfortunately.
Absolutely. And it's so interesting if you think about it in terms of our ancestors and that ancient feeling of adrenaline that starts
Mm-hmm.
running through us. It's like, okay, your body knows before your mind does, this is important. Time to get focused, time to get this right. And so you get nervous, and it's like you were talking about before we hit record. Even if you're just an Instagram post, if you start getting nervous, that's your body saying this matters. Focus. We're going to get everything right that you say in this post. It's interesting.
You said when you were going to go speak, you had this feeling of not being worthy. I want to drill into that
Mm,
because I feel that every day. I feel that when I talk about being a better
mm,
man, I'm like, who am I to say what it is to, like, I know my own personal struggles. You know, some of my own personal struggles. Like, I'm not the guy. And yet I
yeah.
still do it because but I have to fight against that feeling of not being worthy of sharing a message or having this type of conversation. And I know so many men feel the same way, and it causes them to pause and to retreat and not
Mm,
move into something that could be really powerful for themselves and for other people too.
man, you said it. You got to fight against it. And as men, when we talk about what hill we're gonna die on, that's one of those hills right there. You got to fight against your own feeling of unworthiness. I have lived with that, Ryan, for years. I've lived with that feeling. And just like you, I learned at an early age to fight it, and it was a good instinct to fight it. I remember the first time I started catching popularity as a musician. I had a song that was about the college, my alma mater, Texas A&M. And so I had this one song about the school, and it was popular enough to bring a bunch of people to a dance hall for me to play, but no one knew any other song. So I'm playing music leading up to the one song,
Right.
and the whole time I'm playing all these other songs, I'm just thinking that any minute they're all going to realize I'm a fraud. Any minute they're going to realize it's not worth it. It wasn't worth their $10 to get into this place. This guy is a fraud. He's not worthy of my time. I just constantly could not get that thought out of my head. And that thought still plagues me to this day, that as I play a concert, someone's going to be there realizing this guy's not all he's cracked up to be. It's all a lie. And I finally figured it out, and that's in my head constantly. I got to reject that thought.
Yeah, I had one person reach out to me one time. They didn't even reach out. They just posted something negative on Facebook or wherever it was. And I don't remember a whole lot of that because I kind of brush it off. But the comment was like, "You're not as good as you think you are, or you want to be, or you're highlighting." It was something along those lines.
Mm.
And I remember this was a big pivotal moment for me. And I just said, "You're right. Like, you're 100% right. I fall short of my expectation every single day." And I don't know what it was, just for some reason for me to own that and say, "Yeah, you're right. I am short of what I say we should be." It
Oh
just changed
man,
for me. It doesn't matter. It took away the power of somebody thinking less of me. I'm like, "Yeah, you're right. I suck at this." Absolutely.
dude, that is so good. That is so awesome that that's a pivotal moment for you in your mind, and I could totally relate to that. And it's like my haters on social media when they come at me. Most of the time, I agree with them. I'm like, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah. There's a lot of truth in what you're saying. So yeah, I feel that, and I think we need it. It keeps us humble. And if I
definitely.
ever start losing that reality, there's a problem.
So what do people what do people hate on you for? Like, it's just, it's hard for me. It's such a foreign concept that you would follow somebody on social media and you hate them apparently, and everything they stand for and everything they are. And then you take time out of your day to let them know exactly why that is. Like, what are these people saying? Like, what is it that you get hate for? Is it your
Isn't
message
that
of God? Is it like, what is it?
yeah, that's, I guess that's a completely different side. Like the message of God, when people hate on that, it's like, well, okay, yeah, I totally understand that
Yeah, you know where
you're
that's
just
coming
rejecting
from.
that. I'm actually pulling up iTunes right now to see if I could find something that's recent. So this is November 21st. So as we're recording, this is only like 2 weeks old. But here's a 1-star review on my new album, and it says terrible. And the review says, I wish I could give negative stars, all caps, fake country. So
It's so
uh,
strange, man. Like,
yeah, so there you
what?
go. It's like they
Look,
really hated it enough to go and review it with 1 star, fake country.
that is clever though. It's like, I wish I could take away star or whatever, whatever you said. That's pretty good actually. But it's like, there's artists, there's musicians that I don't like, there's movies I don't enjoy, and you know what I do? I don't listen to them. Like,
Oh,
period.
so right.
I'm like, yeah, I don't like
Hey,
that. Beep, delete, the end. Because I have more important things to worry about.
you're so right. And also there does come a sense of maturity that allows you to do that. And I think the younger version of myself was more likely to be the guy that's like, yeah, fake country, man. Wish I can give negative stars. I'd be lying if I said I have none of that kind of stuff in my head, that I would never do that. The
Right.
17-year-old version of myself, yeah, would have done something like that.
You said something a little while back, and you talked about, and I can't remember if it was on your Instagram. I don't think it was on your personal Instagram page. I think it was with Yee Yee, and you had said that you're gonna align the message more with your Christ-centered message that you've been sharing. Do you remember that? It wasn't that long ago. It doesn't seem like. And you
It's
said
like an
we're going to start
Instagram post.
yeah, and you said we're going to start reflecting that message more in our business. And I wanted to ask you
Mm.
that about how people resonated with that or how they responded to that, if there was some pushback on that and how that came across.
We actually, my brother Tyler and I actually talked about that same thing today
Mm,
because of this whole mess with Balenciaga.
right. Right.
And it's like, well, this is just one more reason to lean into our faith and say this is where we stand, and we're not going to compromise this in any terms. Like, we're not going to compromise it because we accidentally hired the wrong ad agency or the wrong photographer. We're not going to slip up in that way, because this day and age, people need to know more than ever exactly where you stand. Here's the point where we will not compromise, and this is like this is our faith, this is what we believe, and this is not going to be compromised. So country or pop, okay, have your subjective opinions about that, but here's where it's objective. This is our faith.
Yeah. That's powerful. How do you get to that point where you have that sort of faith or you have that sort of testimony? Because I know there's a lot of people who are really struggling with their faith. Maybe they've never found God, and they're searching, or maybe they had God in their life at some point and something tragic and horrific happened. And maybe even with, like you, with your own personal situation with your son, and they've, condemned God because of that. Like,
Yeah.
how do you recommend somebody get on this path of finding that sort of faith?
Yeah, that's such a great question, and a lot of people are asking that, and I was one of them, 100%. And I think, um, speaking to our American audience, especially, the idea of cultural Christianity is pretty big. It's pretty prominent. Like, yeah, man, I'm a Christian. Why? Just born and raised, man. Born and raised. God, America, guns, country. That's me. Like that. That's, I go to church. That's what I do. Love Jesus. Love my guns. Like that's just a
Yeah.
thing. And that was
Yeah.
me. And but you don't really know what it means. And then when you really need a draw on it, you're like, suddenly you go, I I don't know. I don't know why God would allow bad things to happen. In fact, I'm kind of mad at him. If he is there, if there is a God, I'm kind of mad at him. Like, why would a good God allow bad things to happen? So that's what that cultural Christianity turns into. That's what it evolves into, unless you find the foundation of it. So for me, I hit rock bottom, and my family, we were struggling. We lost our little boy. Everything was on the surface was great until that, and then I could not pull myself out of this tailspin. I ended up in some extremely dark days, dark nights. Wasn't talking about it. No one else knew on the outside. Nobody in the public knew about my dark days. And I was constantly trying to fix it with self-help that I had learned and become indoctrinated with. It's another American ideal, is that I could fix it. I could do it. I could do it. I'll take care of my family. I could recover from this. I can handle it. Just sweep it under the rug. I'll be the rock. Lean on me. I got this. And so I was, like waking up early. I was doubling down on my reading. I was working out. I was trying to eat healthy. I was like measuring my food with the scale. I was, importing my macros on MyFitnessPal app. I was like reading devotionals, doing my meditations, doing my visualizations, doing my everything Asians, all the Asians. And that worked before tragedy. It kept me in great shape. It kept me really sharp spiritually, until self-help couldn't help anymore. When it was so dark and my bottom was so low, I couldn't find my way out. And that's finally when I had to just say, God, I can't do this anymore. Take this from me. Jesus says, come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I'll give you rest. Well, I wasn't coming to him until then. And I said, God, just take this from me. Take this burden. I am your servant. And in America, that kind of surrender is a bad idea. Like, we look at that as weakness.
I personally, this is where I struggle, man. And we've had these, like, everything about me is like, surrender. What are you talking? No, I got this. Just like you were saying, I don't need, you've given me everything. Like, I believe in God. God's given me everything. Now it's on me. Now it's my turn, and it hasn't worked.
Yeah. And so in the Bible, we see revealed over and over stories of men like that, big, strong men like King David, who eventually were so strong that they couldn't save themselves. And so it comes into this word surrender. When surrender, although it seems like a weak word, it's actually an action. It's an action that we stand up. Like Jesus in the Bible, it's always a call forward. Come to me, follow me. Are you ready to be healed? It's always a stand up. He finds us where we are, but then it's a command to come forward. And so many times we just get this idea that we just want to just waller in the mud, in our own muck. And cultural Christianity says, it's okay. God loves you where you are. God's waiting on you. God loves you. God is love. He's coming to find you. You can hear the inflection in my voice. It pisses me off, because that's not the God is revealed in the Bible. God doesn't say, I love you. I'm going to come lay in the mud with you. Are you hurting? I'm so sorry. Let's just lay here together. No, every time God says, stand up. You are greatly loved. Follow me. Let's go. Every time. And as I started reading the Bible, I started seeing, oh, that's a different God than I was taught. That's a different God than I see on Instagram. It's a different God than we talk about in TikTok. Like, this is a big God who's sovereign, who's in control, who's purposeful, who has a plan that he's working for good, that knows everything and says, let's go, mount up, follow me. He's a leader. He's a war leader. That's the God revealed in the Bible. And that's the God that saved me.
I think one of the things that I can't speak for everybody else, but I've talked with enough guys that I know what a lot of men are dealing with. And I personally am too, that when I get, kicked in the balls by life, whether it's by my own making or just some external circumstance, I tend to fall into like, I deserve this. And I feel like I will wallow in something longer than necessary because I'm punishing myself. Yeah. And I know a lot of guys are doing that. They're in dark places right now. And they're like, no, I don't deserve to be happy. No, I don't deserve to be successful. No, I don't deserve a family. No, I don't deserve this. No, I don't deserve that. And they beat themselves up. Have you
Man,
experienced that?
you're right on. Absolutely. I think it'd be weird if you didn't experience it. And so this is where my God and my Christianity comes in, because unlike cultural American God is love, God is a rainbow Christianity, the God revealed in the Bible says, you're not worthy. You're right.
Mm.
You aren't worthy, but I choose you anyway. I adopt you as a son. I give you inheritance to my kingdom, even though you didn't deserve it. And so when I hear that, and I feel like I'm not worthy and I don't deserve it, I feel like then I see my identity is vertical, not horizontal. My identity is with Christ. He made me. He decides who I am, not me. He created me the way I am. He decides my identity. And so I say, I'm yours. I'm your servant. You're my king. I'm your soldier. I'll follow you. And then when we know we weren't worthy, but he loved us anyway, he chose us anyway, that's when we move forward out of the mud.
I think that falls in line with what we were talking about earlier, where it's just embracing the reality. That's
Yeah.
it's just not something that we're comfortable with to say, we say it on one hand, I'm not worthy. But on the other hand, I'm like, well, maybe I can be worthy. Maybe I can do enough of the right things. Maybe I can say what I need to say, pray the way I need to pray, act the way I need to act, serve as many people as I possibly can. And somehow then I've redeemed myself.
Yeah. And that's a lie, because we never can. There never is enough we could do to make ourselves finally feel worthy. Like, at what point do we go, oh, yeah, I finally crossed the threshold of worthiness to myself? I finally have done it. I finally feel worthy. If we march through life and go, I'm not worthy, but God makes me worthy through his identity in me, and I find my identity through him, and he loves me anyway. He's chosen me anyway, even though I was just a dirty rag to him. Then we march forward and we go, I'm ready to go. I'm ready to fight now. I'm ready to take that hill now.
This message is important to me just because I've recognized that even though by world subjective standards, like I've achieved success, right?
Yeah.
You've got a successful podcast, you've got the income to go with it, you've got the vacations and the things, and things are taken care of for the most part. And yet I don't feel better than I did when I started this 8 years ago. I don't feel any more worthy. I'm like, I still have more room to go, and
Yeah.
I can't find the thing that I'm chasing because it's probably just not there. There's nothing to catch.
He won't. You're not going to find it. And on those terms, on
Right.
your terms of worthiness, you won't find it. And so you got to change the terms. It's the wrong game. You're on the wrong path. I'm saying that to you, and I'm also saying it to myself. I'm preaching it to myself as well.
So one question I've had, and I like having this conversation. I told you I wanted to have this conversation. It's not one that I think we've ever had explicitly on the podcast before about God and faith and finding this.
Yes.
But one question I have a lot of questions, but one question I've had is, if God created us and he wants us to follow him and worship him, and I'm saying this with sincere, like this is a sincere question.
Sure.
It's not a gotcha type question. Is God a narcissist? Like, why would he, you know what I'm saying? Like, why would he create us and then say, follow me, worship me? Like, why? Like, why? What is the point of that? I'm having a
Okay.
hard time wrapping my head around that.
So imagine there's this incredible museum, right? You and I go and we visit this just crazy art museum. It's amazing. And there's one painting in the center of this museum that's just like takes it all. It's worth it all. It's the like most world-renowned picture. It just blow you away if you look at it. So me and you walk into this museum, and we're getting close to this main picture, right? And as we get close to it, we're me and you are scrolling through TikTok, just scrolling, just mindlessly scrolling. We're gonna miss the whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
And we're walking past the painting. Now, if the painting could talk and it says, "Hey, Ryan, look at me. Look to me. I'm the reason you came. I'm going to give you fulfillment. I'm going to give you memories like you'll never forget. I'm going to give you joy like you've never known before. Look at me. Stop looking at your phone." If the picture could say that, would it be narcissistic for it to say that?
On, I know where you're going with that. And where I get hung up is the picture. In this case, if the picture created me so that I could look at it, that's where I get hung up. You know what I'm saying? Like if the
Okay.
picture says you're going to have fulfillment by being here, I'm like, I got it. But you're the one
Mhm.
that created this. You're the one that created me. So I could solely worship you. You see?
Okay. Okay. So the thing about that is, and that's kind of a different scenario. The thing about that is that comes down to why do we suffer, right? Like, why weren't we just created in just perfect bliss? Why do we suffer? Well, I love to think about it in terms of football. So why does an NFL player hold up that Super Bowl trophy and cry? What do those tears mean? Those tears of joy. Why did the tears come? Well, I tell you why they come. It comes from years of struggle. It comes from years of pain and and almost making it and not making it and getting those late phone calls to get drafted. And then that same year, the year of the Super Bowl, it comes from all that work in the locker room, the disputes that they had within the locker room with the players. It comes from that loss at week 2, the team that they shouldn't have lost to. It comes week 5 when their star player got injured and they didn't think they were going to pull it off, and they did in overtime. It comes from all those sufferings come together, and then they win the Super Bowl, and they look back and they go, we did it. It's worth it because of the suffering, because of the suffering. Now, imagine a team now, just no adversity. They win every game 60-0. Nothing matters. You win the Super Bowl. It's just not that sweet anymore. So this is just my opinion. But we go through life and God enters, he brings suffering into our life. So we struggle through it. And one day we get to heaven and we look at him and we go, you saved us through that. It's worth it. It's worth all the pain. It was worth the tears for this. Otherwise, it just doesn't matter.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think, it's easy to feel that way when you're down and you're going through hardship to see it. I've even told my wife this. I'm like, I don't know what part of the plan this is. Like we had that conversation over the past couple of weeks. Like, I have no idea what part of the plan. Like I'm faithful that there is a plan. Like I'm faithful that it is part of the plan. I just don't know what part of the plan this is. And it's miserable at times going through this. And I know there's a lot of people feeling the same way.
Man, this is just me speaking and this is just opinion, but I don't think it's that far of a stretch to see why you have gone through that or anyone listening has gone through something. And the reason I say it is name your favorite fictional book. It always has an antagonist. Your favorite movie always has the bad guy. The reason it's your favorite movie is because of the struggle that your favorite character went through to get to the redemption. Take away the struggle, it's not your favorite movie anymore. And so take your story specifically. You've talked about, on your Instagram, your struggle with alcohol, right? It was super vulnerable and honest for you to post that. And I love that you did that. Now fast forward 20 years and you're sitting on the porch with your wife and you've recovered from it and you've grown from it. And you're sitting there, you're watching the sun go down. Now tell me, is it not better in 20 years as you look back overcoming some of these adversities and you're sitting there with her and you go, we did it. We got grandkids running around playing football in the yard. And you look at her and we go, we did it. Is it not better because of the struggle?
It's better.
Take away the alcohol.
100% better.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And
I agree.
also I feel like not only is it better for me, and this is actually what's given me purpose in dark times, especially where I've been blessed to have a platform like I do and a platform like you do too, is it's better for other people to actually see me go through this. Like it's better for the guys that are following along to see where I am and to see mistakes I've made and things that I've dealt with and then overcome it. That's more inspirational. To your point about a movie, that's going to be more inspiring than me having this perfect seamless life, that they're maybe trying to strive for. It's better for them.
Yeah. Let me make a bold statement here. And somebody can quote tweet me or put it on, write me hate mail, write whatever they want.
Will. Don't worry about that.
You can think of me however, in whatever dark light you want, but I will say this with confidence. I am a better man after losing my son. I say that in total confidence and in total boldness. That doesn't mean that I'm glad he's gone, or I'm glad it happened. It doesn't mean that I don't grieve. It doesn't mean that that wasn't the worst day of my life. It doesn't mean that I wouldn't trade anything to have one more minute with him on this earth. But I am better for going through that struggle. I am a better man than I was back then. I'm a better man than I would have been if he was still here, because I know a lot more about me and my life because of that loss.
Have you always had your faith? I mean, is this something that's always been a part of your life, or was it enhanced and developed
No.
through those experiences? Like, how did this
Yeah.
come to be?
Yeah. I was a weak cultural Christian. I could
Mm,
defend the faith. I could say, yeah, I love God. I could say, yeah, God is real. I could give you some, maybe a few quotes out of the Bible, but I didn't have any fruits from it. There was nothing tangible. There was nothing significant behind it. It was fast food. It wasn't a steak dinner, and it and we see this with so many people. It takes extreme pain, extreme struggle to refine us. It's the same thing with fine metals. How do we refine silver? Through extreme heat. How do you make a diamond? It's the most cliche thing ever.
yeah.
Extreme pressure. It's cliche, but it's actually true. It's the same with us. It takes pressure. It takes heat. That's how we refine ourselves. Give me somebody that's never been through anything, no adversity, no grief, no problems, no addictions, nothing, no breakups, no divorce, nothing in their life. Give me that person. And then give me someone that's been through a bunch, maybe been in prison, maybe had to work his way out of it, maybe lost his parents at a young age, been through addiction, whatever. Give me that person to stand beside me in a fight. I want that guy all day long. I don't want any bit of that guy that's never been through a struggle. Why
That
is that?
that's well, it goes back to what you were saying about the
Yeah.
movie, right? It's like
Yes. Yes.
we see the guy who stands up. I often will talk about like Gladiator. You
Yep.
think about this general who has
Yes.
everything taken away from him, including his wife and son, and
Yes.
is imprisoned and is this gladiator now, and him rise back up from that. Or you think about Braveheart, William Wallace, who has everything taken away from and then leads this army, eventually leads this army, overcomes all of those obstacles. If they didn't have those obstacles, there's no story there. There's no meat, there's no substance there to that individual. You can't have it.
Two of the greatest movies of all time.
Oh, the best. We were
And
talking about our favorite
the
movies. Those are
greatest,
them.
the,
By the
the
way, that is
greatest
objectively
examples.
true for anybody listening to Order of Man. Those two movies have to be on your top five if you're going to be here. If you're going to call yourself a man, they have to be on your top five.
I 1,000% agree. In those two movies, those are the perfect examples to sum up this whole conversation. What drove those two men? It was extreme grief. Both of them lost their wives. Gladiator lost it. Maximus lost his kids. I mean, going through those extreme times is what made them into the men that we then love in the film. That's crazy.
Yeah.
So then we talk about the God thing, the God question. We end up in heaven one day and we look back. Are we better off because of the struggle we had on earth? Or should we just have an easy life and then we end up in heaven and we go, oh, this is cool, God. Where's the fishing hole?
Yeah.
Do you have any four-wheelers up here, God? Or do we get there and we just go, God, you saved me. You saved me. Well, what better feeling would that be?
No doubt. Most of the time when we talk about redemption, right? The redemption story, guys getting back up, getting back after it all the time on the podcast. And, usually it's the self-help stuff. It's like, well, you got to get up early and go to the gym and plan out your day. And that's all true. That's all valuable stuff.
Yes.
But we don't really talk too much, and I never have, about finding your growth through faith. And so if somebody is struggling right now and feels like, hey, I've done the self-help stuff, I've done the getting up, done the workout, I've done the read so many pages of my book every single day, and none of it seems to help, where does a man turn? Like, how do you then begin to take a path that might actually lead you to real fulfillment in your life?
That is my story. And that was my journey in 2019. I was super into it. I did everything I could. And I started listening to, the first thing I started listening to was Billy Graham, some sermons on YouTube. And I was like, you know what, this is kind of cool. This makes me feel a little bit better. There seems to be more to this stuff than I thought. And then I started getting deeper to some deeper pastors that I started finding on YouTube through the algorithm. And then one day I just hit a gold mine on this YouTube video. I was watching this guy named John Piper, this pastor, and he just hit me straight in the gut. And I realized all in that moment that I wasn't worthy, I didn't deserve it, and I was loved anyway. And I was called forward, and I was called up, and I was ready to be healed. And I couldn't do it on my own. As much as I tried, and I proved it to myself. Hey, you can't do it, man. I tried to get better on my own. I tried everything. I read every self-help book you could. I ran, miles on the road. I took cold showers. I meditated and did devotionals and took medication. I did everything. I could not fix myself on my terms or earthly terms until I surrendered. And I went home and I opened up my Bible to Matthew 1. That's the beginning of the New Testament. And I said, God, I'm new to this. I can't do anything else. So I'm giving it all to you. I'm surrendering it to you. I'm about to open this word and read it for what it is, your message to me. And I started reading right then, and I could not stop. I read all the way to the end of that book and kept on going. Finished the whole New Testament, started over in the Old Testament, just started reading, just feeding on it. Just like, God, what do you have to tell me today? Because I don't want to miss any of it. And I started slowly becoming healed as I surrendered.
How one of the things you hear a lot about is like, and I think I even heard that post that you referenced earlier that I made, people are like, oh yeah, the only true path is through Christ. And, it's like, yeah, I believe that because I'm that cultural Christianity you're talking about. I'm like, yeah, that's right. I'm like, wait, hold on a second. Hold on. Before I say that's right, like, let me actually think if that's right. Like, do I actually believe that? Or am I just nodding my head in agreement, being a bobblehead? Yes, up and down, because that's how I was raised. And I feel like it's that. Like, I'm supposed to say yes to that. But when I hear that, I want to know, like, how does God actually work in your life? Not like, oh, he'll be with you. Like, that feels good. But like, what is he working in you? Like, what are the specifics, or like, how is he actually working in you or with you?
Yeah, well, that's another one of the lies that America has taught us on Instagram about God, is that, oh, God's just with you. What does that mean? Like, what does that mean?
Exactly.
He's with me.
I don't know what that means.
Like he wants you to stay healthy, and he wants your kids to be healthy, and he wants your job to grow. And like, does he? Because why am I still getting sick? And why is my boss mad at me or whatever? And so I referenced the passage that hit me in the gut, and it was the pastor was reading out of John 14. And in John 14, the disciple says, Lord, why is it that you manifest yourself to us, but not to the rest of the world? And Jesus answered him, if anyone loves me, he will keep my word, and my Father will love him, and we will come to him and make our home with him. And then the pastor right there, he paused for a second. He said, that's not unconditional love. That is profoundly conditional.
Right.
And then he starts over and he says, he reads it again. If anyone loves me, he will keep my word, and my Father will love him. And then he adds, in a way that he doesn't love everybody. Oh, that's different than American Christianity. That's very different. American teaches us God's unconditional love for you, no matter what you do, no matter who you are, no matter. Now, here's this passage says, if anyone loves me, he'll keep my word. And so I thought, what's his word? I don't know it. I don't know any of it. So instantly I wanted to come home. It's like, okay, Jesus, you're telling me that the way I show my love for you is by keeping your word, and I don't know any of it. And that probably means I don't love you. And then that means the Father doesn't love me either. And that scared me. Now, this is not like legalism. This isn't like Judaism where you're getting all legalism. Like, I got to do this and stack up like Santa Claus list,
right?
Naughty or nice list. It's not that. Right. It's more of, I am loved and I'm not proving it. So that's why I wanted to go home and dive into the word. And as I started reading the word, I started learning about this big sovereign God that is all planning, all purposing. and that allows suffering to happen. So I stopped wondering, oh God, I thought you just wanted me to stay healthy. I thought you wanted my family to be good and my job to stay prosperous. No, I learned that God sometimes drags us through the mud so that we know he is in control, not us.
Do you feel like you can avoid being dragged through the mud if you learn the lessons you need to learn before you need to be dragged through the mud?
Negative. I think that the dragging through the mud, I've had to learn. This is maybe the hardest part. And the Bible says we need to rejoice in our suffering. So that means when we get dragged through the mud, I'm being refined for some reason. There is a reason I'm being refined, but I've done this before. And I know that at the end of the refining, I'm a better man. So when I get dragged through the mud, I don't say, how could I have avoided the mud? I think, all right, God, here we go. Here's the mud again. I'm ready to see what you're trying to show me at the end of this.
That's interesting. So if I understand you correctly, then has your view of pain and suffering, and I'm sure you've had more since your son passed away, is your view of suffering different? I mean, I can't imagine you welcome it, but is there something different where you see it in a different light and it has more significance or meaning to it?
Yeah, this is nothing that's going to make it easier. The Bible says that as Christians, we grieve with hope. And so, for instance, tomorrow I might get a phone call that says, hey, mom went to the doctor and it's cancer. And it's pretty bad, it's spreading quickly. That very well could happen. Could happen to anyone listening to this podcast right now.
I'm sure it will happen to somebody who's listening.
Yes. And I'm not going to look at that and go, oh no, what did I not do, God? What did I mess up in my life? What did I fail to do that now I deserve this? Instead, I got to go, okay, God, what are you needing to show me in this? What do I need to do to be the rock of this family that people could lean on as we walk through this path, not knowing what tomorrow brings, not knowing what this cancer is going to do to mom, but what do I need to do to be there for her and for my wife and for my kids with their grandmother and my siblings, knowing that if tomorrow brings death from this cancer, then I'm going to walk through it knowing that there is a reason, there is a purpose. In 2 Corinthians, Paul says, these light momentary afflictions, he says that. It's crazy he says that because he's been going through so much up to that point. He says, these light momentary afflictions are preparing us for an eternal weight of glory beyond comparison. So the suffering is preparing us. Well, that word, it's important to know what that word preparing means to us. It means it matters. It means it's not pointless. It means that cancer is not meaningless. It means that nothing is pointless. It always matters for something. So instead of saying, why is this happening? We change our question to, what do I need to know from this? What do I need to learn to be the better man on the other side of this? And I could say that as a man who's lost his son and became a better man because of it.
I like that both from a faith-based perspective, but also a secular perspective. And I'll tell you why, because why is backward thinking. Why did this happen? When we say that, like, why me? Why does God hate me? Why did this happen to me? That's backward thinking.
Yep.
What do I need to learn, or what do I need to do now is forward thinking. Because, with the cancer situation you just shared, there's nothing you did or didn't do, but there are circumstances that we have created for ourselves.
Yeah, absolutely. And so will we sit there in the mud? We'll take this conversation full circle. Are we going to sit there in the mud and wallow in it? Or are we going to do, what our calling says to do? And that's move forward, move upward. It's always moving. It's always moving forward.
I imagine you feel this way, but how does your profession tie into your faith? I think about, for me, where I do have faith in God, maybe more, if it's on a scale, like maybe more of the cultural Christianity than the Christianity you're talking about, which is something I'm trying to work on in my own life. But but I know that I'm called to do this work, and it's eternally meaningful, not just here while we're on this earth. There's an eternal meaning and purpose behind it. And I'm curious what that is for you in your line of work.
Ever evolving. And I think about that question, which I think it's healthy for all of us to be constantly thinking about that question. Like, if this faith really means something to me, then how does it tie into all aspects of my life, and
Right.
maybe most importantly, my career? And so that's where the preaching has started coming in, supplementing some of the preaching in. I've got a book coming out next year that's going to explain a lot of what we talked about in depth. And then other than that, I'm starting seminary in January. I'm starting taking seminary online classes.
That's right. You texted me about that. I forgot about that. Yeah.
So
awesome.
I'm just, there not a lot of people know about that yet, but it's just kind of one next step. It's like, instead of, it goes back to the why God. It's like, what do I need to be doing now, God? And certain things are just revealed slowly. So it's like, well, okay, well, this seems like the logical next step. We'll start seminary. We'll see where that goes. And
yeah,
the music thing will just continue to evolve along with that.
Yeah, it seems like you're finding more integration between your faith and what you're doing with your career pursuits and aspirations.
Totally. It's hard to have conversations like we're having right now when we realize so many people are hurting, so many people are searching, so many people are lost, and me go out and just play these fun concerts all the time. And I know that there's a place for that, and there's a good time to have that, and people need music. But at the same time, what is a platform that's more meaningful that I could actually dig in and talk to some of these men and women about what they're struggling, and maybe we could kind of unpack it a little bit. What are those kind of opportunities? That's what I'm looking for right now.
What's interesting too about that is my background is financial planning, and it was meaningful. I think there's meaning and purpose in that. And then as I started doing more of this order of man stuff, I found more meaning and more satisfaction by serving other people. Like I genuinely believe that this, like it's service, but also it's not, I can't separate it from my own benefit either. And that's the beauty of it, is that as we do the thing that we should be doing, and that maybe even we're called to do, then we're blessed by doing that in our own lives, or personally, we're blessed by doing that. In fact, more so, I think, when we're serving other people.
Oh yeah. That's where the golden rule comes in. Yeah. Do unto others. This is one of the most, we could do a whole podcast on what I'm about to say, I think, because I've been thinking about it a lot lately. But love others as you love yourself, right? Like that's essentially the golden rule. That's what Jesus says. Love others like you love yourself. Well, most people think in their minds, well, first I need to love myself. That's what we always think. That's where our mind goes. Right. And that's another lie. We all love ourselves enough. Now, I've unpacked this with people. My brother-in-law's in prison. I've unpacked this with him through the chat on the prison chat, because he told me I'm doing well because I finally learned to love myself. And that's what AA teaches, right? I mean, love yourself. Like that's like a big deal. So my argument, I want to challenge that we all love ourselves already too much. And some people say, no, I actually hate myself. Say, well, let's think about that. What is hate? It's a passion, an extreme passion for something or someone. That's what hate is. That's not the opposite of love. That's a close brother of love. The opposite of love is indifference. And no one is indifferent to themselves.
Right.
Like, I don't care.
Even hate is self-centric.
Yes, exactly. So it's like, no one's indifferent. Like, I could sleep, I couldn't sleep, I don't know. I could eat, not eat, I don't really care. I could have a job or not have a job, or be married or not, I don't really care. I'm just totally indifferent. No one is like that. We are always self-centered, either hating or loving, but regardless, we're passionate for ourselves. Here's where it gets crazy in my mind. I think the ultimate form of that is suicide. It's the pinnacle of self-deprecation, of self-centeredness is suicide, because it's like, at all cost, regardless of all the people around me, of everyone associated with me, regardless of all them, I just want to find rest.
Right.
And I'll pay the ultimate price to ultimately satisfy my own rest.
Regardless of the external consequences of doing that, because you're going to leave a
Regardless of it.
wake of collateral damage in your path by taking that. And I understand it. I've never been there personally. I can't say I have, but I can certainly understand how somebody could get into that dark of a place to feel like that.
Yeah. And so then that puts with that understanding, that foundation, that puts a whole new spin on love others as you love yourself. Because then it's like, oh, I got to really pour into others then, if that's the case.
Yeah. Well,
But the
brother, I see
backwards
you doing
thinking of
that, man.
America, well, thank you, man. I mean, the backwards thinking of Americans now, I keep ragging on our country here, but the backwards thinking of our culture is, well, I got to love myself first. I got to work on loving myself. I got to work more on loving myself. And that just leads to more depression and more anxiety and more, pills and antidepressants and therapy. It's more and more and more because we can't ever achieve the love for ourselves that we think we're trying to get to. And we're not serving others at all at that same level. There's something to that.
So what you're suggesting then is stop focusing so heavily on validating yourself, loving yourself, but turn it outwards and start serving, start helping, start contributing to other people in their lives.
It's exactly what I'm saying.
I
And
know at
then
least
think it,
anecdotally it's worked for me. I mean, every time I start feeling bad for myself and I just sit and feel bad for myself, I continue to feel bad for myself. And the only reprieve that I receive is by not doing that and going and helping somebody else.
without wanting something in return from that person.
Sure.
And
Charity.
then if we want to kind of like check this in our lives, we can all think about someone in our lives that serves others a lot. Like maybe it's your grandma, maybe it's your mother. Like mothers and grandmas kind of fit that role a lot.
Absolutely.
But I think about my grandmother. Sir, she's 96. She's lived so long. She's outlived two husbands, all of her siblings, parents, obviously, all of her friends. She's outlived everyone, and she's still going. And the only thing I could attribute it to is she has served others way more than she served herself.
Hmm.
And that's equaled longer life for her. It's very interesting to test that and think about in your life, who has served others more than themselves and what's their mentality? It's probably pretty good. They're probably pretty
Yeah.
positive people.
Yeah.
They're not
Regardless of their
on, and
circumstances.
they're not in therapy. Crazy, right?
Yeah. Good point. Good point. Well, brother, I appreciate you, man. I really do. This is why we'll have more conversations. Some will be recorded and some won't, some of them are
Yeah.
private, but this is why I wanted to have this conversation. And, you were talking about bad reviews and you pulled up the negative star thing a minute ago. Like, we're going to get some bad ones on this. We're going to get some people, look, if it's for you, good. It's for everybody. I think it's for everybody, but if it's not, that's okay. Like, this is an opportunity to learn about things that maybe we're not familiar with or not comfortable with, but just to expand our horizons a little bit more.
Yeah. Let me just say to those people that are hating on me right now, I totally get it. All this stuff, I am self-testing. I don't have everything figured out. I don't. I'm learning every day. And so, yeah, if you want to input something, you want to tell me I'm wrong, I'm more than willing to learn and to hear from you, because we're just all in this journey, and I'm learning everything myself as well.
Awesome. Tell the guys how to connect with you.
GrangerSmith.com. All the social media is at Granger Smith.
Are you, with your sermons that you do, is that, I mean, I've watched a couple on YouTube, but admittedly, I can't remember if it was like your personal YouTube channel or another channel. Where do the guys go for those?
Yeah, I've been putting up the sermons on my Granger Smith YouTube channel. Yep.
Okay, cool. I
All
wasn't
of them.
sure
Yeah.
because you sent me a couple of links that I was following and I can't remember exactly. And then also, you've got your movie debut, and that's not like the focus of this conversation, or even it just happened to be good timing because I pulled it up because I knew it was coming out. I'm like, when's this come out? And I think it comes out is it the 15th?
15th. Yeah.
Yes. So that's
And
coming up quick.
Yeah, we haven't brought it up. It's funny because today I've been in media all day with that movie. And it's funny because that movie that we haven't talked about is about a man who lost his wife.
Yep.
And he's trying to find redemption. He's trying to find restoration, and he can't do it on his own until he finally surrenders. I had nothing to do with that script, but that's the irony of what this movie is.
Yeah, I watched the trailer a couple of times, so I'm looking forward to seeing that. Not just because of the message, but because a friend is in it as well, and I want to support where I can. But brother, I appreciate you, man. Our conversations have been invaluable. I know the guys are going to get a lot from this, and really, really appreciative of you joining us today.
Man, I love your podcast. I love what you stand for. Love what you do, and it's always an honor to be here.
Thanks, brother.